Okay, we're back. Take two. Basically, for some reason, Vodafone can't give me a consistent internet connection anymore because I'm paying 40 quid a month because the British infrastructure in this country is fantastic. So we're going to attempt to do a second live Q&A. Yeah, no, I've just had enough of Vodafone now. They're going to get a very shitty visit from me tomorrow in the morning. I'm going to walk up to their store. I'm going to give them a nice fucking diatribe in their lovely little shop, and I'm going to tell them I want a fucking refund because you cannot guarantee me connectivity. Because that is 2 days in a row that is cut down midstream, pissed me off, and then you guys see it's frozen. Apparently, I'm still recording. No, I'm not. So I'm getting very, very frustrated with my internet provider. They are going to give me a refund, or I'll take my business elsewhere. Simple. Right. So what we were discussing, I can't remember. Oh yeah, we were talking about the Football World Cup, and yes, some of these countries that appear in UEFA, like Kazakhstan and Israel, for example, is political. Want to have them as part of their confederation. Uh, simply, that's a political one. That Israel is part of UEFA. Kazakhstan, I think that's also geographical and political. They want to play at a higher level and a higher competitiveness level. Um, but no, with more qualifying places, we may. It's going to be interesting to see who actually ultimately qualifies the uh, um, for the World Cup. I'm just update the title. We're doing this on the run because I'm getting very annoyed. Hang on a sec, but it will be interesting to see. I wouldn't say Kazakhstan necessarily get a better chance. I feel that they get money as being part of UEFA. They get better TV revenue and money revenue because their clubs also play in the Champions League and Europa League and Europa Conference League. So it's a money thing as well. It's an economics. It's an economic side of things. So their FA gets more money. Their clubs get more money. Um, their players get to appear on a bigger stage. Uh, and then when you get that exposure, they get signed by bigger clubs, and ultimately that has positive bearing on the game domestically. And yeah, Astana is one of them. I mean, the it is interesting that countries like Kazakhstan get mentioned. I mean, we've played qualifiers against them in the past, um, and yeah, their league hasn't been, obviously they're a former Soviet republic, so obviously back in the and yeah, their league hasn't been, obviously they're a former Soviet republic, so obviously back in the day before 1989 or 1991, their clubs would have played in the Soviet league system, their players would have played in the Soviet league system. So, in regards to that, that sort of sporting infrastructure is a Soviet era based sporting infrastructure. But no, there's a reason why Kazakhstan, for example, plays in UEFA sanctioned competitions, whereas its neighbours like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, for example, play in the Asian system. Um, and it's like Azerbaijan and Armenia and Georgia play in UEFA. Yeah, they share a land border with Asiatic Turkey. There's all these um, interesting side of things. In regards to the World Cup Confederation allocation, I think there's obviously with three co-hosts, you might as well say uh, like treat the European side. Would you be the qualification for the European segment is like what it would be for a like a Euro '96 when it was 16 team competition, that kind of thing, like Euro 2000 when 16 teams participated. So our qualification section is actually going to go back in time. Our qualification section is actually going to go back in time a little bit, whereas Asia and Africa, more spaces become available. In regards to how it all pans out, in that regard, it's going to be interesting. And so we'll have to see how it pans out. I think the bigger concern for me is how the World Cup's structured with the amount of teams, and of course the geographical logistics behind it with Mexico, US, and Canada, and as I said, as I said, the internet connection's unstable again because Vodafone are going to get a very very nasty tweet from me now. Um, and so, in will you aim for change the qualification? I don't know. I don't think. Well, we've had the same qualification protocols in place for a long time. Generally speaking, the best European nations at that given point in that 2 to 4 year cycle qualify for tournaments. Why fix what's actually working reasonably well at this point? Um, why fiddle with something that's clearly working reasonably well? Uh, you know, I think the Nations League is part of that tweaking of the system, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with the Nations League or not. Um, so bear that in mind. Yeah, but there is clearly an imbalance, a massive imbalance. And talking about club football, having obviously watched a few documentaries now on sports governance and now listen to Talk Sport as well. Um, we'll see what happens. My thoughts on the Leicester Tigers boss Steve Borthwick. At least look, he's been involved in the international setup previously. The Eddie Jones sacking should have happened after the last World Cup. In my opinion, I think they should not have given him a contract extension. The fact they did was a mistake, so they've got to pay him out. And we will see what happens. We will see what happens. Quite honestly, in regards to that, I couldn't. I'm gonna have to turn my data off my phone now because that's causing a problem. So now I've got to see if that helps with my internet. I don't know what my thoughts are on it right now. Although the Leicester Tigers, obviously, they've been embroiled in their own salary cap scandal. Steve Borthwick is part of that coaching setup and part of that club that were deliberately breaking the rules. So it's sort of, yeah, one of them really. In regards to Warren Gatland, he was the reason why Wayne Pivac is selected. He was part of that selection process to find his successor. He now replaces his replacement. So Wales are replacing the replacement with the replacement of the replacement. Really, it's that's a sticking plaster. It really is because Gatland, England were after Gatland, so Wales snapped him up. Um, both England and Wales, the domestic games are in real sorry state of affairs. If I can be so brutally honest, and I don't know really what to make of everything. If I'm being honest, um, well, you get sometimes going back to what worked before doesn't work a second time. Yes, Warren Gatland is a really good coach. There is no denying that. For some reason, it worked better at Wales than it did at Ireland. I think when he initially went in, the players he had and how he got that commitment for the jersey from those players. I wouldn't. No, I had this argument online, and some guy was trying to deny that rugby union is in crisis, and I said, well, two big clubs going bust, the Welsh Union busts. Oh, it's not in crisis. It's better than it's ever been. Have you seen crowd numbers? Have you seen the financial state of the game and the debt load and the fact that two salary cap scandals in the space of a short period of time before and after COVID? Pretty embarrassing salary cap scandals, in my opinion. Um, but the game is in a great place. Some of these people are deluded if they think the game is in a healthy state. They really are. They really are. Of course, it's denial. Football's not in a healthy state. It's denial. It is denial. Like the fact that Amazon Prime now has the autumn internationals, and not everyone, a lot of people are boycotting Amazon for a variety of reasons, including how they treat their workers and the fact they avoid paying tax as best as possible, sometimes evading tax illegally, um, because they think the younger audience is going to be interested in going straight down Amazon Prime. People are cutting back on their subscriptions. Free to air TV is the answer at this cost of living crisis. Oh no, we'll put as many subscriptions. People are cutting back on that. And I was a bit skeptical about Amazon getting the Autumn International series. I was at the time, and I still am. Um, and I don't know. They did. They got fined. They got fined for it. They cheated as much as they could get away with without losing points or having a Saracens style relegation, getting thrown out of the league. But now they've ring fenced the Premiership, so teams like Bath, who are absolutely dreadful, are being rewarded for failure by not being punished for failure. And Leicester and Saracens are like, well, we're not really getting punished for cheating. So rugby union, the RFU and Premiership rugby are burying their heads in the sand in regards to the mismanagement of the game they've allowed. And teams like Bath are getting away with being shit because there's no punishment for being crap. That's how promotional relegations work. What we'll end up with is like a draft system where the championship below, the best players get drafted by the Premiership clubs in the end. That's how it's going to end up. We're going to end up with an Americanized system, which, to be brutally honest, look how Super Rugby went. Look at rugby union in New Zealand and Australia because it's doing so financially well. They even tried a draft system in rugby league in Australia and it got thrown out in court. And Aussie rules only has it, and it sort of works but doesn't. They're trying to Americanise sport in Australia and New Zealand, and it's not working because our sporting cultures are intrinsically different, and the American and what they're trying to do is encourage the American market to buy into their product, as we are with selling our football clubs to Americans and our rugby clubs and our sporting assets like our F1 teams and stuff in Europe. The Americans don't get our sporting culture. Yeah, F1 apparently is in a stronger state than it's ever been, which is a lot of bullshit. It's in the strongest state it's ever been in the US. Rest of the world, there's a lot of discontent amongst motorsport fans with the direction F1's taking. It's not as healthy as made out. The golf, the LIV golf versus the PGA, golf's in a mess. What do I think of the Rugby League World Cup? Could have been better. Could have been better. Not terrible, not great. Could have been better. Pass mark, yes. I'll give it a B minus, C plus, but definitely room for improvement. I think the 2017 World Cup was better, even though we in total had better crowd numbers in total of fans attending. Could have been better. I think the gap between Super League and NRL is very clear now. It was growing in 2017. It's exceptionally, it's wide open now. You could fit Lola Ferrari's cleavage in the gap now. Before it was, you get a cigarette paper. Now you can get the late great Lola Ferrari's fake boobs in there. That gap is massive, massive. Ealing Trailfinders and Jersey. I mean, look, should Ealing be the next Premiership club to replace one of the clubs that's failed, like Wasps or Worcester? I think they should, because we're going to have an odd team league. We need to have an even team league for fixturing and for TV, because now a team is going to be missing out every weekend on gate receipts and TV revenue. So get Ealing in there, get Jersey in there. Get Leeds, Yorkshire, just shove them, or Yorkshire Carnegie. I don't know if they're still at a decent level. Get Rotherham in there. Any championship club, get them in there. Turkey's corrupt though, so let's worry about the amount of teams in Turkey that have been done for match fixing. There's been several Turkish match fixing scandals, the Turkish top flight. So here's what it is. Yeah, and that leads to match fixing. It leads to fixture probleming. Bedford, yeah, that's a good shout. But again, they've made the Premiership a closed shop. CVC, that lovely investment equity partnership thing, venture capitalists have bought stakes in the Six Nations, have bought stakes in F1, have bought. It reeks of, well, that's other people's money, and oh, there's loads of match fixing scandals in Turkey. Just go on Wikipedia, type in. There's a German match fixing scandal. There's been match fixing allegations about the non-league here and the lower league divisions here. There's two obviously big scandals in Italy, um, Greece. There's been rumours about Spain, France. It's not just the Italian one. The entire premise of club football is there's about 700 games under investigation, of which I think a third of them are international matches, including World Cups and Euros, actively in the last 15 years or something, or 20 years. Um, so there is that to consider. Okay, my connection is unstable apparently, so this may do what the last stream did and fail, and then we'll have to figure it out. So I'm going to try and forge ahead. Fuck what the internet's saying, because it's saying I've got full connection. It's saying I've got full connection here, so obviously something's not happening with me. It's happening outside. So Vodafone are going to get a very, very, very shitty email from me. I might even go on Twitter and abuse Vodafone on Twitter, because that'd be fun. We like having a Twitter argument with companies and go, your service is crap. I'm paying how much? You are a disgrace. I want a refund. Go for it. But oh look, I was 15. So I just turned 16. It was in the build up to the World Cup, and it broke at the end of 2005 that there were rumours of suspicious activity, and it obviously dated back for a long period of time. This wasn't just the 2005, 2006, 2004, 2005 season. This was the best part of a decade worth of fiddling the books, and fiddling matches, and fiddling, paying off referees and giving out information on lineups and what players not playing or who's on the bench. It's just little things that's like. But when it broke, yeah, I was just about turned 16. I just turned 16, so it was around Christmas 2005, about 17 years ago, something like that. And yeah, it implicated a lot of clubs. It wasn't just Juventus; it was a lot of clubs. Well, hey, we got stable connectivity. We won the battle. We stuck in there. Hopefully, this stream goes a bit longer than the last one, and we can actually get at least an hour. That's what I'm aiming for. Yeah, I remember the Cal Chopperly. I know this. I mean, today I've literally just been watching sports documentaries. I've just been watching documentaries today. No, it'd been on Channel 4 to about 2002, 2003, and then it was back on Channel 5 from about 2007, 2008 to about 2010. So there was a gap. When the scandal hit, it was in between TV deals here in the UK. That's what I remember from it, is the Channel 4 coverage. They didn't renew their contract, and then Channel 5 picked up some games following Setanta's collapse. Yes. So Setanta going out of business, Channel 5 picked up some TV slots for, games, and it happened to be the Italian Serie A. The best World Cup I've watched, for me, I would say 2006, or 2014 was quite interesting as well, because it was in Brazil. I liked 2018 as well. I did enjoy 2018, but 2014 was a good one, and 2006 was a very good one for me. Of all the World Cups I've watched since 1994, bearing in mind I watched my first international football in 1992 with the Euros. So I've been watching, and I only watched a few games in USA '94, predominantly the Republic of Ireland games, just because of my family's links with both the UK and Ireland for work and family history and stuff. And Diana Ross missing a sitter from 12 yards with a massive inflated football was summed up that World Cup. And while teams like Bulgaria did really well in Sweden with a young Henrik Larsson, and we had Stoichkov with Bulgaria, and we had some fun memories of some of the underdog teams doing quite well. For me, yeah, France '98 was a big moment as a kid, but the 2002 World Cup was kind of fun. But I've still got my. I'm going to look at goals per game average in the 32 team World Cup era, because I do think they've dropped a little bit. Although they might have gone up because some teams like England and like Spain in the group stage battered some teams, and then Brazil have scoring for fun. Um, I didn't find it too bad with time zone. Bed late if there were certain time zone things, so that wasn't too bad for me when I was at school, and I was at home as well on those weekends because we had. I think I remember the Senegal France game was the opening game of that World Cup, and that was my sports. And obviously, France lose to Senegal, and then the first 2 weeks of the tournament, I was on half term break at the time. And then the second half, our lessons were winding down because we were doing our mock exams for the following year. They were preparing us for our exams to go into the next school up in the prep school public school system. So I went to Wellington College for my basically my secondary education. And there's an exam common entrance if you go to private school, basically. So when you're between the ages of 11 and 13, you can either do your 11 plus and then go into grammar school or start your standard secondary education then, or you do your first 2 years of secondary education still in private school, but using the secondary education syllabus, and then you do a thing called common entrance. So that year I was doing mock exams for the following year. We were practicing doing coursework and prepping us to get into the GCSE style of lessons and coursework. We were having a bit more of a relaxed curriculum in that summer term. So I remember watching the first 2 weeks of the tournament, like the group stages, really, at home on my school holidays. So I wasn't. I would wake up at like 4 in the morning to watch games. And my mum just didn't care because I was occupied and I was doing stuff. And of course, the England Brazil game I was watching at school. I remember Ronaldinho's free kick. I remember watching the final at home as well. So that was. I remember I was very impressed with what Ireland did in that World Cup. Young Robbie Keane, obviously what happened. Obviously, Matty Holland, who was Charlton captain at the time, and of course Roy Keane leaving the camp and everything that happened there, which has now reached obviously famous levels of footballing law with Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane. Of course, they ended up managing against each other in the Football League at one point, which was quite a tasty one when you've got the old manager and the young player who is now a manager. I believe Mick McCarthy was, I think, Sunderland manager at the time, and Roy Keane was Ipswich manager at the time or something, and they or Wolves manager, and then they crossed paths. Um, I would say USA '94 is nearly equivalent to South Africa 2010. I think that South Africa got a sporting pedigree, and of course, South Africa making up the apartheid years where they were left out in the cold. They actually had a very good football team in the '80s and the '90s, and they won the '94 African Cup of Nations. And South Africa is still making up for that lost 25 plus years or something with the apartheid ban on South African international sport. And so that in their rugby union as well, which has led to a lot of the problems that Super Rugby face with the rugby union and the money issues. Um, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think this is the last World Cup of a 32 team format. But I will look at the goals per game average in the 32 team World Cup era. I've definitely got to look at that for a video uh, um, at some point because I do think goals per game was going up in between 2014 and last year's Euros in major international tournaments. And I think we've seen a spike and now it's slowly dropped down again. But if the average for this World Cup is still higher than the first 32 team tournament, goals per game is still up. Just because one tournament spiked a little bit, we'll see what happens going into the next World Cup when weaker nations have qualified. Um, I think yeah, no, we had a very good group of players between 1996 and 2004. I would say that was our when they say the golden generation. I think that's our best group of players since the 60s and 70s. Um, bearing in mind 2 years previously, we beat Germany at the Euros 1-0, and we were the two worst teams in our group at that Euros. We both failed to qualify from the group in 2002. Germany, I think, finished bottom of the group in 2002. So this is the first time Germany, and admittedly, yes, the last World Cup they were disastrous as well, but this is the first time that Germany has really faced 20 years, 2 decades, the sort of situation they're in now since 2000, when they completely ripped up everything. But what is interesting, so we beat them at the Euros, they beat us the last competitive match at the old Wembley, and then we beat them in Munich. And then obviously what then happens is we meet again in the 2010 World Cup. Of course, we know what happens there. And we then did them at the Euros last year. So the rivalry between the two nations is intense. It goes 66 till now, basically, till now, basically. Um, Greece 2004, the biggest upset in international football. Yeah, but they played like Morocco did against Spain, so I don't see that as a tactical genius and a team working for each other, a sum of all their parts. They didn't have any outstanding players, but they had some solid players, and they worked really well with the system that they had in place. And Georgios Samaras summed it up at the time as he summed it up since he's wound down his career. Is at that time Greece had the Olympics, but actually the Greek. But this is well before the financial crash. Georgios Samaras summed it up then as he sums it up now as like a mess then, and this was a win for the the Greek people, and um, it meant something. And that was 18 years, 19 years ago. I remember as if it was yesterday. It's amazing, how time flies. I think Samaras is still playing. I think he's the only member of that team still playing. I think. He's got to be at the end of his career now. But with Portugal, they were great hosts. They really were. But Ronaldo's tears in that final sums up what I think of Ronaldo. It's his ego and his petulance. He was a petulant child at Man United when he first went there, and he's become a very petulant, overgrown man child now. And I think what happened at Man United with that unauthorised, I'm gonna watch the Piers Morgan interview tonight on Talksport because they've got a full interview up, and I'm gonna just listen to it and go, "This is shite," because it is. It's massaging Ronaldo's ego because the reason why he doesn't name names in that interview is he's afraid of getting sued for libel. Um, so we'll see what pans out in regards to uh, you know international football and the direction it takes. And, some of the questions are what my views on the Rugby League World Cup. I was like, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it was a pass mark. Do you think the MLS has helped the American Canadian players develop their game? Um, Look, it's helped develop the game as a whole, the sport as a whole in the US and Canada. More kids are playing it now than ice hockey. Um, Look, it's helped develop the game as a whole, the sport as a whole in the US and Canada. More kids are playing it now than ice hockey, and they're about to overtake baseball for participation at grassroots level, amateur level, and a bunch of lads just wanting to have a game. So beer league, for example. But as a league, it's still the fifth league. It's still far behind the NHL. The NHL is closing the gap rapidly on the Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is, I think, the most vulnerable major league in North America right now for losing its spot as in the top four. I think the NHL is closing that gap. They've had some very good expansion with Seattle and Vegas. They've made some good revenues. They've had some good merchandise sales. Major League Baseball, declining fan base, aging fan base, declining revenues, just going to have a lockout, very vulnerable, no universal TV deal, so their media rights, very late on the uptick of a European series. We'll see what happens. Mexico underachievers at this World Cup, yes. They normally get to the second round. When they host, they get to the quarterfinal. Mexico were disappointing. Do I think the MLS has helped the American Canadian players? Uh, Going back to that, there's more kids playing the game, there's more people watching the game. The MLS is growing as a league, but it's still far behind in the US. So the Hispanic population is focusing south of the border on, you know, what the Mexican club teams in Liga MX are doing. So yes, the MLS is in a healthy position. I think expansion. They had two options: consolidation, so protect what they had, or rapid expansion. And David Beckham is the catalyst for saving the league. Um, the NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, who is the Major League Baseball? Major League Baseball has the worst labour history with strikes. Major League Baseball has the worst labour history with strikes and lockouts, and I did a video on it. I've done videos. They're on the channel, and please feel free to share them and discuss them. The NHL has had one strike and three lockouts. I've done videos. They're on the channel, and please feel free to share them and discuss them. The NHL has had one strike and three lockouts. The NBA hasn't had any labour unrest for a long time. The NFL's had some. But the NHL, apart from Major League Baseball, is the one that most recently had some problems. I think the NFL is the one that most recently had some problems. I think the NBA's had a few issues, but for the most part, the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA seem to now have a good balance between the players' associations, the league, and the team owners, and then there's a sense of compromising in good faith and negotiating in good faith. Major League Baseball, there's no good faith there. We can go back to 2.5 years ago with the return to play negotiations, and from COVID, and there was a concern that we could have seen a player strike or lockout. Then they allowed the CBA to lapse. This time last year, we had just entered the lockout. So we'll see what happens. Would the Nations League be more interesting? It'd be better if it was on free-to-air TV constantly, and better, and players actually giving a fuck about it. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Yeah, I'm sorry, but when players of high pro better, and players actually giving a fuck about it. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Yeah, I'm sorry, but when players of high-profile nations or high-profile players saying we don't have an interest to play this competition, and they're half-arsed, and coaches put out half-strength teams, and they've got a full team available to select from, or for players fully available, it's not a great advert. And what we saw was Gareth Southgate didn't really care. He put out a half-arsed team that put a half-arsed effort in, and Belgium didn't really care. And their players came out and said, "We're not interested." De Bruyne saying, "Why?" And they are, and Simon Jordan. While he says, I've actually started to agree with Simon Jordan more and more on Talksport. I must be ill. When Simon Jordan says it, they are just glorified friendlies, which they are. I think to replace the Nations League, that's where you have your qualification tournaments, your qualification groups for the next major tournament you're playing. Get rid of the Nations League completely. That's your qualification tournament for the next Copa America or the next Euros or World Cup. Bang, get it done. Play your internationals home and away. Blah 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 blah. Bang, that's your little qualification tournament in that summer period, which gives the players an idea of what an international camp is all about. Following year, you play your Euros or your World Cup in Europe, for example, or South America. You play your Copa America and your World Cup, and then you do the cycle again. Scrap the Nations League. I think the viewpoint. I understand why the Nations League exists, and it was fan pressure saying we've had enough of these pointless friendlies, and it wasn't just England. It was all the European nations. These friendlies aren't solving anything. Players are getting injured. TV revenues are low. Stadiums aren't fully at capacity. There's a lack of and all it's done is replace the friendlies with competitive internationals, but still cluttering the international calendar. These Nations League games should be classed as the qualifiers. Qualification, there's a qualification group. So let's say England, Switzerland, Luxembourg. We'll throw in Andorra in there because we always get one of the real crap ones. Denmark and Poland. That's our qualification. And normally in a qualification, I think it's 8 nations or something. And one of those nations has to be the host nation for an intense little tournament. Not in the national stadiums, smaller stadiums, right? Regional stadiums around the country. You play your international quick, bosh. Not in the national stadiums, smaller stadiums, right? Regional stadiums around the country. You play your international quick, bosh. In that summer period, and qualification section, it gives all those players an experience of a tournament dynamic. And then the following year, you play your Euros or your World Cup. And in between that, again, next qualification tournament for that following tournament, bosh. And it gives, there's your international cycle, the club, and it gives, there's your international cycle, the club game, no international breaks, bosh, done. So finish congestion, no international breaks, bosh, done. So finish congestion, fixed. So in reality, you have a 12-month, 52-week, 365-day a year international cycle, the club cycle, with the gaps in between where it's classed as the true off-season, where those players can actually have their holiday and rest and relax. And, there you go. There you go. I've just sold international football. Of course, UEFA make less money that way. Yeah, they make less money that way. What's going on with the London Major League Baseball series? They confirmed their dates. Videos up on the channel. They confirmed the teams, and they confirmed what other years subsequently they're going to come. They're not going to come in 2025, but they're here next year, 2024 and 2026. And I think Cardinals are playing the Cubs. They're the Yankees, yeah. It's Cardinals, Cubs. Middle of next summer. In CONMEBOL, well, there's only I think there's only like 11 teams in CONMEBOL, so that's going to be interesting considering there's only 11 nations in South America out of I think 13 that qualified under into CONMEBOL. I think Ghana and Suriname are part of CONCACAF. French Guiana's technically part of France's and overseas department, so they don't have a football. They're a guest associate member, and the rest of South America, you've just basically summed up. That means one of the South American nations that constitute CONMEBOL can't play. So that's flawed. So basically, South America then. I think it'll be about 50-50, to be honest. On a given day, Brazil can beat any, obviously, is the best team in the world. But on a given day, any team in the top 10 teams in Europe can beat Brazil. It's been proven. Brazil aren't invincible. Argentina, they lost to Saudi Arabia. So, you know, although they beat Brazil. So, I don't know how that. Look, I think the Nations League format is inherently flawed. Um, it doesn't solve the problems further. Venezuela, I think, are the weakest out of all the South American nations right now, and Venezuela's got a lot of problems. So it's almost in a state of civil war. So I don't know. I don't know. Venezuela's got a lot of problems. So it's almost in a state of civil war. So I don't know. I don't know really. But look at the nations that missed out the World Cup: Peru, Colombia, and Chile. Um, who, I think were all at the last tournament. So the last World Cup. It's insane. And then you've got Bolivia, who back in the day were a pretty decent side. And you've got Paraguay, who are a pretty solid South American outfit. So it I don't know how much you can take from it. So do Ecuador, but Ecuador beat home and away against Brazil. Brazil can beat and Bolivia. Imagine them at sea level with their altitude training. They should. Bolivia are a half decent side. I don't know what you can take from qualification because not every single player is going to be available. Not every club is going to release players for international duty. So it's one of them. It's there are better ways to solve the international calendar and congestion, and FIFA, UEFA, CONMEBOL, CONCACAF are not fixing the problem. Basically, so what can you do? International breaks mid-season that disrupt the flow of the league season. So in theory, you should have every available fit player. So your strongest team should be out on the field for the qualifiers. Yeah, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela. It's all to do with the post-COVID and inflation rises and price rises, and you have a guest team that hops in or something for the Copa. Play each other twice, so